My brother kicked me out over his wife's lies. Now they're homeless with kids, and I refuse to let them back in my life. When I was 22, I inherited our grandmother's house, a beautiful Victorian with enough space for my brother and his family to stay while they saved for their own place. They moved in with their 2 kids, promising it would only be temporary. Just 6 months, my brother assured me. We'll be out of your hair before you know it. His wife despised me from day one. She'd make snide comments about how I decorated, complained that I was too loud when I came home from my nursing shifts, and acted like I was invading her space, in my own house. She'd rearrange my kitchen without asking, throw away my mail claiming it was junk, and lecture me about proper household management while I was paying all the bills. The passive aggression escalated weekly. She'd use my expensive shampoo, then deny it when confronted. My leftovers would disappear from the fridge, and she'd claim she thought they were communal food. When I started labeling everything with my name, she complained to my brother that I was being petty and territorial. I tried talking to my brother about her behavior, but he always made excuses. She's stressed about money. She's not used to living with other people. You're being too sensitive. Every conversation ended with him defending her and dismissing my concerns. The worst part was how she treated the children around me. She'd pull them away when I tried to help with homework, claiming I was confusing them with different methods. When I offered to babysit so they could have date nights, she'd find reasons why that wouldn't work. You're too strict, she'd say. Or, they need consistency in their routine. Meanwhile, she had no problem leaving them with me when emergencies arose. When her daughter fell off her bike and needed stitches, I was the one who drove to the hospital because she was too panicked to function. When her son had a fever in the middle of the night, I was the one checking his temperature and administering medicine while she hyperventilated about calling 911. But the next day, she'd act like those moments never happened, like I was still the problematic sister-in-law who couldn't be trusted around children. The breaking point came 6 months later. I arrived home exhausted from a double shift to find her screaming at me in the hallway. She claimed I'd been stealing money from her purse and eating her food from the fridge. Both accusations were ridiculous. I made decent money and kept my own groceries clearly labeled. "You've been sneaking into our room," she shrieked, her face red with manufactured rage. "I know you took $40 from my wallet last Tuesday." I stared at her in disbelief. "I work 12-hour shifts. When exactly would I have time to rifle through your belongings? Don't lie to me," she spat. "I have proof." She pulled out her phone and showed me photos of her purse, claiming they demonstrated evidence of tampering. The images showed nothing but a normal wallet with normal wear. She pointed to creases in the leather as if they were smoking guns. "You moved my credit cards around," she insisted. "I always keep them in a specific order." My brother stood behind her, silent, as she launched into a tirade about how I was jealous of their family and trying to sabotage their marriage. When I tried to defend myself, she burst into tears and ran to their room, wailing about how she couldn't live in a house where she didn't feel safe. That night, my brother knocked on my door. His face was stone cold, a look I'd never seen directed at me before. "We need to talk," he said. He told me his wife had been documenting everything, times I allegedly took money, instances where I supposedly threatened her when he wasn't around, photos of missing food items. None of it was true, but he believed every word. She'd created a detailed log with dates, times, and descriptions of my supposed crimes. According to her records, I'd been stealing from them for months. Small amounts at first, $5 here, $10 there, then larger sums. She claimed I'd threatened to kick them out multiple times when he wasn't home, using language so vile he couldn't repeat it. She had photos of food she'd bought that had supposedly gone missing, though I recognized most items as things I'd purchased myself. "You're toxic and you're tearing our family apart," he said. "We're done enabling your behavior." I stared at him in disbelief. This was the same brother who'd cried in my arms when Dad left, who I'd helped through college by working extra shifts at the diner. The same brother who'd promised we'd always have each other's backs no matter what. The same brother who used to sneak into my room during thunderstorms because he was scared of the dark. "Get out," he continued. "Find somewhere else to live. We're not doing this anymore." I laughed bitterly. "This is my house. Grandma left it to me, not you." His face twisted with something I'd never seen before. Pure contempt. "Then we'll leave. But don't expect us to have anything to do with you after this. You need help, and until you get it, you're not welcome in our lives." The finality in his voice broke something inside me. I realized he'd already made his decision before entering my room. This wasn't a conversation. It was a verdict. "What about the kids?" I asked quietly. "They're used to living here. This disruption will hurt them." "That's your fault," he said coldly. "You should have thought about that before you started this campaign against my wife." "Campaign?" I repeated. "What campaign?" He listed a series of alleged incidents, times I'd supposedly made snide remarks about her cooking, occasions where I'd deliberately excluded her from conversations, moments when I'd undermined her parenting in front of the children. Each accusation was either completely fabricated or a twisted version of innocent interactions. The most damning claim was that I'd told the children their mother was a bad person and they'd be better off without her. I'd never said anything remotely close to that, but according to him, his daughter had repeated my exact words. I asked to speak with the children, to hear these allegations directly from them, but he refused. "You've manipulated them enough," he said. "They're confused and scared because of your behavior. They packed that night." I watched from my bedroom window as they loaded their car with boxes and suitcases. The children looked confused and upset, constantly glancing back at the house. His daughter waved at my window, and I waved back, not knowing it would be the last time I'd see her for 3 years. My brother blocked my number before they even reached her parents' house. When I tried calling from work, he'd hang up immediately upon hearing my voice. I sent letters that were returned unopened. I even tried reaching out through social media, but found myself blocked on every platform. He told our extended family I was mentally unstable and dangerous around children. The story he spread painted me as someone who'd suffered a psychotic break, possibly triggered by jealousy over his happy family. He claimed I'd threatened violence against his wife and had been caught stealing from them multiple times. Most of our family believed him. Why would he lie about something so serious? Why would he cut off his only sibling unless the situation was truly dangerous? Our mother had died when we were teenagers, and our father had disappeared shortly after. My brother and I had raised each other through our late teens and early 20s. We'd been each other's only constant family for over a decade. The idea that he could throw that away so easily devastated me in ways I couldn't have imagined. For 3 years, I heard nothing. Mutual friends stopped inviting me to gatherings where he might be present. Family holidays became minefields of awkward silences and whispered conversations that stopped when I entered rooms. Our cousin would update me occasionally. The kids were doing well in school. They'd moved to a bigger apartment. His wife had started working part-time at a boutique. I rebuilt my life around the hole his absence had left. I advanced in my career, earning a promotion to head nurse in the cardiac unit. I bought new furniture to replace items that reminded me of our shared childhood. I made new friends who didn't know about the family drama. I even started dating someone, a kind doctor who didn't judge me for the messy situation with my brother. But late at night, when the house was quiet, I'd still hear phantom sounds of children laughing in the backyard. I'd catch myself buying extra groceries out of habit, then remember I was the only one living there. The guest bedrooms remained exactly as they'd left them, like a shrine to a relationship that had been murdered by lies. The hardest part was the holidays. Christmas morning in that big house, surrounded by gifts I'd bought for children who would never receive them. Easter egg hunts in an empty backyard. Thanksgiving dinner for one at a table that had once hosted family gatherings. I tried therapy, but found myself defending my brother even to my therapist. Despite everything he'd done, part of me still believed in the boy who'd protected me from neighborhood bullies and shared his Halloween candy. The therapist helped me understand that grief doesn't follow logic. You can mourn someone who's still alive, especially when they've chosen to become a stranger. Then last month, everything changed in the most unexpected way possible. I was restocking supplies at the hospital when my coworker mentioned seeing a familiar name on the charity housing list. Families facing eviction who needed emergency shelter. My stomach dropped when she showed me the paperwork. My brother's family had been living in a one-bedroom apartment since her parents kicked them out 2 years ago. According to the documents, his wife had been fired from 3 jobs for theft. The same woman who'd accused me of stealing had been caught taking money from employers. Their rent was 4 months behind, and they had 2 weeks before losing their home. The irony was so sharp it cut. The woman who'd destroyed my relationship with my brother by accusing me of theft had been stealing from everyone around her. The pattern was clearly documented in her employment records. Hired, performs well initially, then small amounts of money start disappearing, eventually caught and fired. Her first job after leaving my house was at a dental office. She lasted 8 months before being terminated for taking money from the petty cash drawer. According to the incident report, she'd been stealing small amounts for weeks before being caught on security camera. When confronted, she'd claimed the money was payment for extra duties she'd performed without authorization. The second job was at a retail store where she was caught on camera pocketing cash from the register during busy periods when multiple cashiers were working. She'd developed an elaborate system of voiding transactions after customers left, then keeping the cash. The loss prevention team had been tracking discrepancies for months before identifying her as the source. The third was at a restaurant where she was fired for stealing tips from other servers. She'd been taking money from shared tip pools and even lifting cash directly from tables after customers left. The final straw came when she was caught on camera taking $20 bills from a coworker's purse in the break room. Each time, she'd blamed the accusations on workplace bullying or discrimination. She'd claimed she was being targeted because she was attractive, because she was married, because she didn't fit in with the existing employee cliques. Each time, my brother had supported her version of events, helping her find new employment and dismissing the allegations as misunderstandings. The pattern was so consistent, it was almost artistic in its precision. She'd present herself as a dedicated employee, work hard enough to gain trust, then begin stealing once she had access to money. When caught, she'd play victim and move on to the next opportunity. Now they were facing homelessness, and the children would likely be placed in foster care if they couldn't find stable housing within 2 weeks. The next day, my brother appeared at my workplace, something he'd sworn he'd never do. He looked terrible. His clothes hung loose on his frame, his eyes were hollow and rimmed with dark circles, and he'd aged a decade in 3 years. Gray streaked his hair prematurely, and his hands shook as he waited by my car in the parking lot, clearly desperate. "I need to talk to you," he said when I approached. I kept walking toward my car, keys ready. "We have nothing to discuss. Please," he begged, following me across the parking lot. "I know things ended badly, but we're family." I turned to face him, and for a moment I saw the scared little boy who used to crawl into my bed during storms. But the memory only made me angrier. "Family doesn't choose liars over blood," I said. He flinched but pressed on. "She's changed. She's been getting help. And the kids, they ask about their aunt all the time." That stung more than I expected. I'd loved those kids like my own, had been the one who taught his daughter to ride a bike and helped his son with homework. I'd been the one they came to when they had nightmares, the one who knew exactly how they liked their sandwiches cut. I'd been planning to take them to Disney World for their birthdays, had college funds started for both of them. "Where was this concern when you believed her lies about me?" I asked. His shoulders sagged under the weight of 3 years' worth of guilt. "I was trying to keep my marriage together," he said quietly. "She said you were jealous, that you were trying to break us up. She had so much evidence, and I thought I was protecting my family, and you believed her instead of me, your sister, who gave you a place to live and helped you through college when mom was working 3 jobs just to keep food on the table." He nodded miserably. "I was wrong. I see that now." I got in my car, but he grabbed the door before I could close it. "We're going to be homeless next week," he said desperately. "The kids will have to go into foster care if we can't find somewhere to stay. I've applied everywhere. Shelters, transitional housing, even reached out to churches. There's a waiting list for everything." My heart clenched at the thought of those innocent children being separated from their father, but I kept my voice steady. "That sounds like a conversation you should have with your wife. She's the one who caused this mess. You have a 4-bedroom house," he continued, desperation making his voice crack. "We wouldn't even have to see each other. We could stay in the basement just until we get back on our feet. I'm working 2 jobs now. I just need time to save for a deposit." I stared at him for a long moment. The same basement where I'd hidden when Dad would come home drunk and angry. The same basement where he'd promised to always protect me from anyone who tried to hurt me. "I'm not your safety net anymore," I said finally. "You chose her. Live with that choice." I drove away, leaving him standing in the parking lot looking broken and defeated. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept thinking about those kids. Innocent victims of their mother's manipulations and their father's weakness. But every time I considered relenting, I remembered that night 3 years ago. How quickly he'd turned on me. How easily he'd believed her lies. How he'd called me toxic and dangerous. The more I thought about it, the angrier I became. Not just at the situation, but at myself for even considering helping. He'd made his choice. He'd chosen to believe I was capable of theft, manipulation, and psychological abuse. He'd chosen to cut me out of his life and poison others against me. Now that his world was falling apart, he expected me to forget all of that and rescue him? The audacity was breathtaking. The next morning, my phone rang. An unknown number, but I recognized his voice immediately. "Please don't hang up," my brother's voice said. "I know you don't owe us anything, but I found something you need to see." Against my better judgment, I agreed to meet him at a coffee shop downtown. Something in his voice, a mixture of shame and urgent desperation, made me curious about what he'd discovered. He looked even worse in daylight, hollow-eyed and desperate, wearing the same clothes from the day before. He slid a manila envelope across the table with shaking hands. "I found these when we were packing," he said quietly. She left her laptop open, and I saw an email folder I'd never noticed before. Inside were printed emails between his wife and her sister, dating back 4 years. My blood ran cold as I read them. The very first email was sent just days after they'd moved into my house. "Living with his sister is perfect," she'd written. "She works nights so I can search her room for anything valuable. Found some jewelry in her dresser. Nothing too expensive, but might be worth something if things get tight. Also noticed she keeps cash in a coffee can in her closet. Probably emergency money." Another email, dated a month later. "Had to get creative today. Took $40 from her wallet and hid it in my makeup bag. When she notices it's missing, I'll tell him I saw her acting suspicious around my purse. Need to start building a case against her in case she tries to kick us out. Also moved some of her food to our section of the fridge. If she complains, I'll say she's being possessive about shared space." The emails revealed a calculated campaign of manipulation that had started before they'd even unpacked. She'd systematically stolen small amounts of money from both of us, then blamed me for the missing cash. She'd eaten food I'd bought, then claimed I was stealing theirs. She'd moved her own belongings around, then accused me of going through their things. Even worse were the emails about the children. She'd coached them on what to say if anyone asked about their aunt. She'd told them I'd said mean things about their mother, then instructed them to repeat these fabricated quotes if questioned. The innocent comments I'd supposedly made had been entirely scripted by her. One particularly chilling email detailed her plan to escalate the situation, going to start leaving money in obvious places and then claim it went missing. Need to make her look desperate and untrustworthy. Also thinking about hiding some of the kids' toys and saying she took them out of spite. The more unstable she appears, the easier it will be to convince him she's dangerous. The psychological manipulation was breathtaking in its thoroughness. She'd created an entire false narrative, complete with fake evidence and coached witnesses. She'd turned my own brother against me using lies so detailed and consistent that questioning them seemed paranoid. Email after email detailed her systematic plan to turn my brother against. She'd stolen small amounts of money from both of us, blamed me for the thefts, and documented fake evidence to support her claims. She'd orchestrated arguments by deliberately misplacing items and then accusing me of hiding them. She'd even taken photos of her own belongings, then claimed I'd moved them as evidence of my supposed invasion of their privacy. The final email was sent the night before our confrontation. "Tomorrow, I'm going to force the issue. I'll accuse her of threatening me and stealing. He'll have to choose between his wife and his sister. Either way, I win. If he chooses me, she's out of our lives forever. If he chooses her, I'll use it as evidence that his family doesn't accept me and our marriage is doomed." Already planted the seeds about her being jealous and unstable. This should be the final push. But there was more. Hidden in a subfolder were emails to potential employers, fabricating references and work history, communications with loan companies using false information, even correspondence with dating sites while she was married, clearly planning exit strategies with other men. I looked up at my brother, who was staring at his hands like he couldn't bear to meet my eyes. "When did you find these?" I asked, my voice barely steady. "Last week," he said. She left her laptop open while she was in the shower, and I saw the email folder by accident. I thought it might be job applications, so I clicked on it. When I saw your name in the subject lines, he explained how she'd initially denied everything, claiming the emails were taken out of context or that her sister had misunderstood their conversations. When he showed her the printed copies, she'd tried a different approach, claiming she was protecting their marriage from my alleged interference. She said you were trying to break us up from the beginning, he continued. That everything she did was in self-defense against your psychological manipulation. She actually tried to convince me that you'd somehow hacked her email account and planted false messages. When that didn't work, she'd moved to playing victim. She'd claimed postpartum depression had made her paranoid and desperate. She'd insisted that her actions, while wrong, were the result of mental illness and fear that I would turn her husband against her. When I told her I was leaving and taking the kids, she completely changed, he said. Dropped the victim act entirely. Started threatening to claim I was abusive, to tell everyone I'd been hitting her and the children. Said she'd make sure I never saw them again if I tried to expose her. The worst part? She'd been fired from her recent jobs for the same behavior. Stealing from co-workers, creating drama between employees, playing victim when caught. The pattern had followed her everywhere, but she'd always managed to convince my brother that she was being unfairly targeted. She destroyed our lives over her lies, he said, his voice breaking. And I destroyed my relationship with you by believing her. I sat in silence, processing everything. Part of me felt vindicated. I'd been right all along, but mostly I felt empty. 3 years of pain and separation because my brother had chosen to believe a manipulative liar over his own sister. 3 years of missed birthdays, holidays, and everyday moments that could never be recovered. She's moved back in with her parents, he continued. Filed for divorce last week. Claims I'm emotionally abusive for confronting her about the emails. She's already telling people that I invaded her privacy and that the stress of our failing marriage drove her to desperate actions. Even now, she's playing victim, I said. He nodded bitterly. She started a social media campaign about surviving an abusive marriage, posts about gaslighting and emotional manipulation. The irony would be funny if it wasn't so destructive. Her friends are rallying around her, calling me a monster for abandoning my family. Meanwhile, the children barely understood what was happening. They'd been told mommy and daddy were having problems, but they kept asking when mommy was coming home and why they couldn't live with their aunt anymore. They remembered me fondly, despite their mother's attempts to poison them against me. What do you want from me? I asked finally. I want to fix this, he said desperately. I want my sister back. I want my kids to know their aunt. I know I don't deserve forgiveness, but I'm asking anyway. I studied his face, the same face that used to make me laugh when we were kids, that had looked up to me when mom worked double shifts to keep us fed, the same face that had twisted with contempt 3 years ago when he'd called me toxic. Finding those emails doesn't change what you did to me, I said quietly. You believed the worst about me without question. You chose her over family. You didn't just take her word. You actively participated in cutting me out of your life. I know, he whispered. I've hated myself every day for 3 years. I wake up every morning remembering what I did to you, and I go to sleep every night wishing I could take it back. And now you're homeless and desperate, so suddenly I'm worth talking to again. He flinched, but didn't deny it. That's not, yes, we need help. But I would have come to you anyway, once I found the truth. I've been trying to work up the courage to contact you for months. Would you? I asked. Or would you have stayed silent to avoid admitting you were wrong? Would you have let me go on thinking my own brother believed I was a thief and a liar? He didn't answer, which was answer enough. The truth is, I continued, you didn't just believe her lies. You wanted to believe them. It was easier to blame me than to admit your wife was the problem. It was simpler to cut me out than to deal with the real issues in your marriage. That's not true, he protested weakly. Isn't it? You had a choice between investigating her claims or just accepting them. You chose the path of least resistance. You chose to sacrifice me to keep the peace with her. He sat silent, unable to argue because we both knew I was right. I can't do this, I said, standing up. I can't pretend the last 3 years didn't happen. I can't trust you not to believe the next person who whispers poison in your ear. What about the kids? He asked desperately. They're innocent in all this. They don't deserve to suffer because of mistakes the adults made. I paused at the door. The children were the only part of this situation that truly broke my heart. They'd been weaponized by their mother, lied to and manipulated, used as tools in her campaign against me. The kids are your responsibility, I said finally. You should have thought about them before you chose a liar over your sister. I left him sitting there with the evidence of his wife's deception spread across the table like the ruins of our relationship. That night, I called our cousin, the only family member who'd stayed neutral during the whole mess. She confirmed what I'd suspected. My brother's wife had been spreading rumors about me to anyone who'd listen. Stories about my alleged mental health issues, my supposed jealousy, my imaginary threats against her and the children. The woman had been thorough in her destruction. She'd contacted my workplace with concerns about my stability around patients. She'd told neighbors I was dangerous and unpredictable. She'd even reached out to my friends with warnings about my supposed psychological problems. The damage reached further than I'd known. My nursing supervisor had pulled me aside 2 years ago for a conversation about maintaining professional boundaries, after receiving an anonymous tip about my alleged mental health issues. Friends had started treating me differently, some admitting years later that they'd heard concerning things about my behavior. Even now, with the truth exposed, some relatives still believed her version of events. The damage was permanent. Some people preferred the dramatic story of the unstable sister to the mundane reality of a manipulative daughter-in-law. A week later, I drove past the homeless shelter downtown and saw my brother's car in the parking lot. My heart clenched, but I kept driving. Whatever sympathy I felt was overwhelmed by the memory of his contempt, his willingness to believe the worst about me, his complete abandonment when I needed him most. 2 weeks after our meeting, I received a text from an unknown number. It was him, using a borrowed phone because his service had been cut off. The message was simple: kids in foster care as of today. Still think I deserved this? The manipulation in that message was so obvious it was insulting. He was trying to use his children's suffering to guilt me into helping him. The same children he'd failed to protect from their mother's lies. The same children he'd allowed to be turned against me. I deleted the message without responding. 3 months have passed since our coffee shop meeting. I heard through family that he's working 2 jobs: maintenance at a hotel during the day, stocking shelves at a grocery store at night. He's living in a studio apartment trying to prove to child services that he can provide stable housing so the kids can be returned to his care. His ex-wife is already engaged to someone new, a wealthy older man she met at her parents' country club. She's probably spinning the same web of lies about how her previous husband was abusive and controlling, how she barely escaped with her children, how she's finally found someone who treats her right. According to our cousin, she's fighting for full custody, claiming my brother is mentally unstable and financially irresponsible. She's using his current living situation as evidence that he can't provide for the children, the same situation she created with her lies and theft. The children are struggling in foster care. According to the social worker's reports, his daughter has started having behavioral problems at school, acting out in ways that suggest deep confusion and hurt. His son has become withdrawn and clingy during supervised visits, afraid to let his father out of his sight. Sometimes I wonder if I made the right choice, if forgiveness would have been the stronger path, if choosing mercy over justice might have been better for everyone involved, especially the children. But then I remember that night 3 years ago, when he looked me in the eye and called me toxic, when he chose to believe lies over our shared history, when he not only abandoned me, but actively participated in destroying my reputation. Some betrayals cut so deep they sever the very foundation of a relationship. Trust, once shattered so completely, can't be glued back together with apologies and evidence. The cracks will always show. I've started seeing that doctor again, the one I was dating before all this happened. He's patient and understanding, never pushing me to forgive for the sake of family harmony. He understands that some wounds don't heal just because you want them to. I have a good life now. I've been promoted to head nurse in the cardiac unit, a position that brings both respect and financial security. I've bought new furniture for grandmother's house, replacing pieces that held too many painful memories. I've built relationships with people who trust me, who wouldn't throw me away at the first whisper of doubt. My social circle has grown to include colleagues who've become close friends. We have monthly dinner parties at my house, filling the empty rooms with laughter and conversation. I've joined a book club, taken up gardening, and even started volunteering at a local animal shelter. The house that once felt like a monument to betrayal has become a sanctuary again. I've turned the guest rooms into a home office and an art studio, spaces that serve my interests rather than holding space for people who might never return. My brother made his choice 3 years ago when he decided his wife's word was worth more than his sister's truth. He chose to believe I was capable of theft, manipulation, and psychological abuse. He chose to cut me out of his life and poison others against me. Now he has to live with the consequences of that choice. Family isn't just about shared blood or childhood memories. It's about loyalty, trust, and standing by each other when things get difficult. It's about giving each other the benefit of the doubt, especially when outsiders try to drive wedges between you. My brother failed that test when it mattered most. He chose a liar over his sister, manipulation over truth, convenience over courage. I don't owe him a second chance to hurt me. I don't owe him the opportunity to choose someone else over me again. I don't owe him forgiveness just because he finally discovered what I tried to tell him 3 years ago. The children are the only tragedy in this situation. They're innocent victims of their mother's manipulation and their father's weakness. But protecting them isn't my responsibility. It's his. He should have thought about them before he believed lies about their aunt. He should have considered their well-being before he burned bridges with the only family member who could have helped them. Sometimes the strongest thing you can do is walk away. Sometimes self-respect matters more than family loyalty. Sometimes the healthiest choice is refusing to enable someone who's proven they'll betray you when it's convenient. I've learned that forgiveness isn't always the noble choice. Sometimes it's just another form of enabling destructive behavior. Sometimes the most loving thing you can do is let someone face the full consequences of their actions. My brother chose his path 3 years ago. Every decision he made afterward was a choice to continue down that path. When he could have reached out and apologized, he chose silence. When he could have investigated his wife's claims more thoroughly, he chose blind faith in her lies. Now he can walk that path alone. The house feels different now. Not empty, but peaceful. I sleep better knowing that my space is truly my own, that I won't wake up to false accusations or manufactured drama. I work my shifts knowing I'll come home to consistency and calm. Sometimes I catch myself wondering what those children look like now, whether they still remember their aunt who taught them to ride bikes and helped with homework. But those thoughts lead nowhere productive. They're part of a life I'm no longer allowed to participate in, victims of choices their parents made. I choose to focus on the relationships I can build, the trust I can nurture, the peace I can maintain. I choose to surround myself with people who know my character and wouldn't doubt me based on someone else's lies. My brother had his chance to choose family over convenience, truth over comfortable lies, loyalty over appeasement. He made his choice. Now I've made mine.